So if tonight I sat down right here and I said, I have a big announcement, and it was going to be a huge announcement, and then I said that Tracy and I were moving, and this would be our last night here. Now that's not an announcement I'm making, just a theoretical. Although it would be funny if you texted your friends and said, PJ started the message telling us, someone that's not here. Anyways, and then you prank them. But I was thinking about this. If I did make that announcement tonight, and I did tell everybody that, which I'm not leaving, I'm going to be here for a long time. Some of you are like, dang it, almost had my chance to get somebody else. But that's not happening. I was thinking about this though. What would people say when I was gone? Now, like, if I left and I went somewhere else, what would people say? Some people would probably be, like, glad about it, and I understand that. But most people, I would hope, would have good things to say. Like, in like, a year from now, they'd be like, oh, yeah, you remember PJ? And like, they would say, he was always, I don't know, or he had this funny thing he did when he talked, remember? And or they had this, you'd have some stuff that you would say, I would think. How would I be remembered? But even more important than that would have been to me, like, what kind of an impact did I have? Did I make a difference in people? And I think that that's probably true, and I hope that it is, as was thinking about that. So let's flip it a little bit. Let's say that tomorrow there was a big accident of some kind, and you died. Now, you like how in my illustration I moved, but in your illustration you die. Okay, but in your mind, you die tomorrow, okay? Something happens and you die. And so, like, Saturday, we have your funeral, and we're standing around your grave. What are we saying? Like, some people, I know, maybe there's, man, he was a jerk. So, it's like, oh, man, she could talk, and man, did she, it never stopped, okay? Or, oh man, maybe most of you would say things like, he was so nice. He really like impacted me, or he was so funny. Every time I was around him, I was laughing. Those kind of things. What would you want us to say? Have you ever thought about that? If you died tomorrow, what would you want us to say about you? Now, I know you didn't want to come and face your like mortality, like first part of my message tonight. Like, well, we're talking about my death right now. I was thinking about this. About a year ago, I was at a funeral and I went to the cemetery. And I was walking out of the cemetery and I saw something and I took a picture because it was one of the saddest things I had ever seen. And I took this picture and here's what I took. It was somebody's grave and it just said unknown. They died and nobody knew their name. Nobody was there. It was just unknown. And I just stood there and stared. I was like, how does that happen? Like, how can you go from this world and nobody even know who you were? Like, you literally left no impression, I guess, other than this rock that says unknown. And as I was seeing that, and I was thinking about this, we all are having an input, at least we hope, having an influence on people around us. You're leaving a legacy, right? You have a legacy to leave. And we want to have a good one, I think. And maybe talking about death is a little extreme, so let's back off a little bit. Do you realize, middle school, that you will not always go to your middle school? It will soon be over. 8th graders are like, it's getting close, okay? If you're in high school, guess what? You will not always be at that high school. Yeah. Yeah, okay. That's right, you will not always be there. There will be a time when you are gone. And have you ever thought about this? After high school, what are people going to say about you? Have you had an impact on somebody? Someday in the future, someone is going to look at your yearbook. This was my yearbook from 2003. You're like, what? That's right. You can see it. It says it right there. 2003 seniors. And there I am. Okay. There you go. Notice it says president. That's right. I rigged the system so I could win. No. Nobody ran against me my senior year. But anyways, So there I am. And now somebody's probably flipped through this yearbook and said, oh, I remember that guy. He was, and I don't know what they said. He was a dork. Okay, I don't know. he whatever. So they would say something, and some people will think about you, and they'll say something, okay? And they'll think something, and maybe it's really good, and I hope that it is. Or maybe it's kind of, your memories of them is kind of like my memories of Taco Bell, right? It's really great in the moment, but later I'm regretting it, all right? Later it hurts, okay? They really enjoyed your fun time, but it caused them some regret. And maybe that's the memory. Or maybe some of you have a memory, someone would say something like this: I am closer to God today because I knew you. Because I knew, how about you, Lily, all right? I know God because of this person. I got through this hard time in my life because of you. Maybe someone will look at your yearbook picture in 5 years, 10 years, and be like, and go, I remember them. They are the ones that did this for me and changed me. You would have left a legacy for them. So are you going to leave a legacy? Are you going to make a difference? Some of you are like, nope. Some of you are like, I hope. So I want to talk about it because I think we're supposed to. Look at somebody next to you and say, you can make a difference. You can. Look at somebody else and say, I have a legacy. That's right. I hope that you believe that. So one day, Jesus was in a boat. We're going to look at a story from Jesus in Matthew, and we're going to learn about legacy. Mark chapter 6. Jesus is in a boat, and he shows up, and there's this huge crowd of people. Huge crowd of people. In fact, it says that there was 5,000 men. Okay, now that probably means there was also women and children, so maybe, 10,000, 15,000, we don't know. But there's at least 5,000 men there, okay? And so this is what happens. It says, when Jesus arrived, he saw the huge crowd, and he went right to work teaching them. So he just quickly starts teaching them because that's what they want. When his disciples thought this had gone on long enough, it was now quite late in the day, and they interrupted. So they're like, Jesus, this is a little long-winded. You should have had the red clock at the back of the room to tell you when to be quiet. And y'all didn't know it was there. Now you're going to be looking the whole time. Oh, we're almost done. Oh, man, it still says 19 minutes and 34 seconds. Okay. We are a long way out in the country, and it is very late. Pronounce a benediction, which is like say the ending prayer, and send these folks off so they can go get some supper. He's like, we're a long ways from food. They're going to be hungry. You need to just send them to go get some food, Jesus. Jesus said, you do it. Fix supper for them. By the way, this is the Message Bible. That's why it sounds so natural. We're just reading a story, so I thought we'd do that tonight. You fix supper for them, he says. They replied, are you serious? That's how you tell somebody. Now, I was thinking about this, though, just real quick, just a side note. A lot of us never move past, are you serious with Jesus? We get saved, and we're like, Jesus, I'm going to do all this for you. And he goes, okay, I want you to do this. Are you serious? Are you kidding me right now? This is not, nobody does that, Jesus, okay? And if you never move past, are you serious with Jesus, you'll never move into what he wants for you, by the way. So that's just interesting. Is they say, are you serious? You want us to go spend a fortune on food for their supper? It's like, this is going to cost us so much money. Like a year's worth of working is what it tells us in another version. But he was quite serious. How many loaves of bread do you have? Take an inventory. So he's like, go find out. Go find out. See how much you actually have right now. That didn't take long. The Message Bible. I just don't know why they write it like that. Anyways, 5, they said, plus 2 fish. So they're like, okay, we have 5 loaves of bread and we have 2 fish. And in this version, in this passage, it doesn't tell you. But the exact same story is also in John. So this one's in Mark. There's the exact same story in John. And it tells you about how there was actually a boy who had a lunch, and he had 5 loaves and 2 fish. So they found some boy whose mom gave him lunch, right? And he's walking along with his food, okay? And and he had 5 loaves. Okay, I got 5 loaves of, oh no. Still good. And, I only got 2 chickens, okay, instead of 2 fish. But you get the idea. So here he is, he's walking around, and they take this, they go up to this boy and like, can we have your lunch for Jesus? And I guess he's like, He's like, yes. And they give him, and I had this in my car. You know how hard it was for me to not eat this on the way here? Like, oh my gosh, it smells so good. And so they find this kid now, and they take it and they bring it to Jesus like, this is all we have. We have his 5 loaves and his 2 fish. And then, if you know the story, Jesus takes it, he prays over it, and he starts breaking it up and putting it in a basket. And somehow it just keeps going, and the whole basket gets full. He does another one, another one, another one. And before you know it, they have fed all 5,000 people plus however many other people were there. So they feed the entire group of people from his little box lunch. And it was really weird when I ordered that too. They're like, you don't want fries? You don't want sauce? No, I want 5 loaves and 2 chickens. I kept waiting for them to catch that it was a Bible story, and they didn't. But anyways, so here he was. He just had this lunch. And, it was just probably his normal thing. He didn't think anything special was going to happen. In fact, if somebody came up and asked you tonight if I could have your lunch, or like on a regular day, if they could have your lunch to feed everybody else, you'd be like, no, I'm going to eat it as fast as I can so you don't take it. And you definitely wouldn't want to share it like he did. But he gave his lunch. And do you realize, I was thinking about this, for the rest of his life, I bet you he told that story. In fact, I guarantee you he drove everyone he knows crazy, because you would, right? Every time he was at dinner and someone was like, wow, this is a lot of food, he was like, oh yeah? Did you hear about that time when I had a lunch and Jesus turned it into so much food? Yes, Bill, we've heard this story 18,000 times. Stop telling us. Well, it was cool though. I mean, you should have been there, okay? He's like hanging out by the lake. People are catching fish. I see you caught 2 fish. Did I tell you about the time I had 2 fish? And anyways, and you would, because it'd be amazing. And you know who else remembered the story? It would have been the 5,000 people. I mean, they would have remembered that for the rest of their life. Like, yeah, this kid had this, and it just turned into, it was amazing. We saw this miracle. They would have been telling that story for the rest of their life. And, well, that's maybe not really what we think about as a legacy. It kind of is a legacy. We can certainly learn how we can have a legacy from the story. And so I want to help you do that. 3 ways. 3 things you need to know about having a legacy. Number 1, you have a lunch. You have a lunch. Now, I'm going to use the word lunch in some various ways, meaning some different things. But you have a lunch. So this kid, he had his lunch box or whatever, and he probably didn't know he was going to have that impact. But he had all that Jesus needed to make a difference in that crowd with him. And you may think, I am not smart enough. I'm not talented enough. I've made too many mistakes in my past. I don't know how to do this kind of thing. I'm not good enough. And you know what? You're probably right. But the good news is it's not you. It's Jesus in you that has the potential. You have enough. You might not think that your talent is enough, but it is enough with Jesus. You may not think that your abilities are enough, but it is enough with Jesus. I am so thankful for that, because I'm actually a pretty awkward speaker, and I just need Jesus to help me make this work, okay? I need his help, and he makes ministry happen for me, and he will make it happen for you. You have a lunch. You have abilities, you have purpose, you have plan, you have a few. Lunch is who he created you to be. You have something that he has put in you that he can use to leave a legacy. You have something in you, and it is going to be different than mine and the person sitting next to you. Look at them and say, I don't want your lunch. I don't want you. Yeah. Actually, some of you might. Some of you might be looking at somebody up here on the stage and going, boy, if I could sing like that, if I could do like that, I could make a difference. Or you've met somebody and you're thinking, man, if I had what they had, then I'd make a difference for Jesus. But you don't need their lunch. You have one that God gave you. You have an abilities that God gave you. And if you look at your past and say, I've made so many mistakes, I can't make a difference for Jesus. Let me put it to you like this. Have any of you ever spent some time in your life trying to kill Christians? Anybody? Really glad no one rose their hand. Don't even think about it. Okay. And you probably already know where I'm going with this, because the guy who wrote Romans, 1st, 2nd Corinthians, Titus, all those books, okay, who spread the gospel to most of the world at his time, he's the reason that we are Christians today is Paul in the Bible. And he spent the time before he was saved, before he was a Christian, seeing to it that other Christians got put in jail and killed. And so he made a difference despite his past, and your past is not worse than his past. You have a lunch, you can leave a legacy. You need to know that, and you need to believe that. The next thing is this. You have a lunch, now give your lunch to Jesus. Now when I say lunch here, I'm using lunch in different ways, okay? You have purpose, now your lunch is your life. You have to give your life to Jesus. You have to give what he's enabled you. You have to give these abilities that you have, these desires you have. You give it to him. That little lunchbox that kid had did not do much when it was just in his hands. It would have fed one person. This box right here, if I started spreading it out, I mean, come on, some of these guys back here could eat this whole box and then still be hungry, am I right? You know? And it's much less feed this entire room. Because by myself, that's not much. But with Jesus, it was able to go do something. And if you give your life to him, your life can make a difference. Now, when I say give your life to him, I don't just mean you one day at the end of a service said, "Dear Jesus, I believe in you." I mean, that's great. That's important. You believe in him. That's a beginning. I'm talking about your life, your desires, what you do, what you think about, how you live. That's giving him your life. That kid gave it to Jesus. I don't even know if he knew he was going to get any food back. Okay, I'll give it to Jesus. We'll see what happens. But we give it to him and we trust him with it. And we think, okay, most people only have a lunch for themselves. They only have life for themselves, right? They make money for who? Myself. I post pictures on Instagram. Why? So people can see me and how, they pretend like their life is awesome by always taking the perfect picture, it's all about me. I got to make my money. I got to do this thing. I got to go to college so that I can have this. And listen, I have no problem with making money. I have no problem with having good friends. That's all great stuff, but that's not going to ever leave the right kind of legacy. That's not going to give your life purpose. It's not even really going to make you happy. In fact, I just saw this week, I was reading an article about a guy. I'm not going to tell you his name, but if I told you his name, every one of you would know it. I mean, he's super famous. If you saw his picture, you would know who it was. He's made millions of dollars doing what he does. And he just got arrested for DUI, and he looks like the saddest person I have ever seen. And you're thinking, you have it all. How? You're famous, you've got money. Stop trying to figure out who it is. You're famous, you got money. How are you not happy? Because that is not how you've achieved purpose in life, by making a bunch of money. There's something much greater. And look, money's great, okay? If you have it, awesome. And I'm not telling you to not pursue making money. That's great. But the truth is, though, if we pursue giving our life to Jesus, then we find real purpose. I want to leave a legacy with my life. I want my life to mean something. And I know in different seasons I'll leave and go different places, and I want where I left to have been influenced and left a legacy. And it happens when we give our life to Jesus. Here's why I do it. I'm going to show you why I do it. I just found this verse 2 weeks ago, and I love it. It's one of my favorite ever. Here's what it says. For Christ's love compels us. Now, you know what compels means? My dad used to compel me when I was a little kid. Okay, did your parents compel you? Do you know how he would compel me? So he would say, pick that up. I would say no, and then he had what I would call the compeller. You know what I'm talking about? He had this big wooden paddle, okay? It was the compeller, and he would come over to the piano bench, and he would say, bend over, and I'd bend over the piano bench and tighten up, and then he would go poof, and then I would do that. Yeah, I don't know why I ran around every time, but I did, And then I would do it. He compelled me, okay? He had that compeller and it worked. The good news is Jesus doesn't compel that way. This is how he does it, with love. His love compels me because we are convinced that one died for all and therefore all died. So he died. He died for me. He died for you. And therefore I should let myself die. Not physically like he did. I'm giving my life. My life in, so it goes and does something else. And this is this next verse I love. And he died for all, that those who live, you're alive, should no longer live for themselves. Everybody lives for themselves. But he says we should no longer live for ourselves, but for him who died for them and was raised from the dead. Because he died for me, I'm going to live for him, not for me. What makes him happy, that's what I want to do. I want to give him my lunch. I want to give him my life. I'm no longer going to live for myself. Now that's different. And when you start to live this way, no longer for yourself, you'll leave a legacy, a good legacy, a legacy that you'll be glad that you left. If you will no longer live for yourself. And the last thing, so I have to believe I have a lunch. I have something that God has put in me to offer. You give your life to him, you give your lunch to him, and here's the last one. Give your lunch to others. Wait a minute, am I giving it to Jesus or am I giving it to, what are you talking about? Here's the great thing. You give your life to Jesus, and this is what he's going to tell you to do. I can already tell you. Go give it to others. He's going to tell you how. He's going to tell you what to do. He's going to tell you how to give your life, to give your love, your passions, your desires to others, and help others. In fact, you may go, I don't have anything to give. Well, I got good news for you. Your lunch in this case is Jesus. Then Jesus declared, I am the bread of life. He's this stuff right here. And a chicken, okay, I guess, isn't it? He's the bread. He's what satisfies. He who comes to me will never go hungry, and he who believes in me will never be thirsty. He is the bread of life. And what we want to do, once we've given our life to him, then we're going to go give him to others. We're going to go give him to others. And through you doing that, you will leave a legacy. You will be remembered, and you will have impacted people for the rest of their life. Give your lunch to others. So if you have been ministered to by this church, and I know a lot of you have, there's someone that you don't even know whose legacy you're in. So 60-something years ago, my mom's dad started a church in Fort Worth called Grace Temple Church. Grace Temple Church. It was a little church, and then it grew, got bigger and bigger, and over the course of 50 years, he was the pastor, and then my dad became the pastor and moved the church to Burleson. We were in a shopping center, and we were there for a little while, and then 4 years ago, we moved here. And whether you started maybe in the shopping center or you started here, if you were impacted by the ministry of this church, if you're closer to God because of that, do you realize you're actually in my granddad's legacy? Because this church would not be here if 60-something years ago, he didn't give his lunch to others by starting a church. And we're not all supposed to called to start a church. In fact, there's another person whose legacy that I'm definitely in, and if you've been ministered to by me, then you're in as well. So when my dad was about 18, I think it was, I have trouble remembering the story exactly, but he had just gone through a really hard breakup. Some of you know what that's like. And he was not really close to God. I mean, he called himself a Christian, but he would tell you he wasn't a Christian. And so he was at the football game, Friday night football game, drinking. And he wasn't drinking Coke, okay? He was drinking at the football game. And this girl, whose name I don't even remember, invited him to church on for a Wednesday night. He went and got saved, gave his life to Jesus, and completely changed everything in his life. He got called into the ministry, and he became a youth pastor and then pastor. And I am alive because my mom would have never dated him before he got saved. I'm alive because of him, but not only that, I'm raised in a Christian home because of some girl at a football game who said, would you go to church with me this Wednesday? I'm in her legacy. Do you see how that is? That's amazing to me that somebody at a football game's legacy is still living today, just that decision to live for Jesus enough to ask somebody who's getting drunk at a football game to go to church. That's amazing to be in that legacy. How many of you are in the BHS band? Anybody? Yeah, okay. So okay. There's not all of you here tonight. There's about 12 to 15 people from the BHS band. And this is really interesting. We did this the other day. I was asking people, and I kept tracing it back. And pretty much everybody from BHS band, there's about 12 to 15 of them, I can trace them back to Vittoria. Because Vittoria invited Corbin, who happens to be here tonight, which is pretty cool. And then Corbin invited Dylan and Ashton, and there they are, okay? And then they invited some other people, and now Wade, who got invited by some people that invited those people who she invited, he's healed of his headaches that he had and taken 5 medications a day and all that. And that is Vittoria's legacy. That she did start by starting in his, because he carried it on, right? I mean, and so on and so on. And that's a legacy. That's a difference forever that they left. I know a guy whose name's Justin. He was my best friend. When I got to know him, though, he wasn't close to God. he would have told you he was just playing games. He wasn't a Christian. And he made the mistake of signing up to be a roommate with me, and that wasn't going to last, And it wasn't long until he was reading his Bible every morning, and he was helping me run a Bible study, and now he's a Christian man who's got a family, and his kids are being raised in a family, in a Christian home, and all that. And why? Because of a legacy. You have a legacy. You will. Maybe you don't think about that now because you're 12, and you're like, I want that Cane's. That's all I've been thinking about, since you put it up there. Is he going to give it out after the service? Is that like a thing? I mean, I don't know. Surely he's not going to eat 5 loaves all by himself, but maybe I'll get one of them. That's all we know. That's what you're thinking about, okay? But here's what I just want to put this in you. You can make a difference. You are called to, as a believer, to no longer live for yourself, but to live for others. And if you'll do that, you'll leave a legacy. And maybe you won't even know. I mean, I don't know. That girl who invited my dad, maybe I'll find her in heaven and be like, thank you, But you're going to leave a legacy. You're going to leave a legacy. Let me make it real practical, real personal for a second. Can you just picture who do you sit at lunch with at school? Think of, do you see them? Maybe 2 or 3 people? Or maybe it's the person or group that you always sit with when your band or your sports team or whatever is going on a trip. Those guys or girls that you always talk to. You see them? Okay. In a few years, they're going to talk about the times y'all had together, and they're going to talk about the funny things you did and the silly moments and the games that you won and the things. Okay, you're going to talk about those, and that's great. But what if they remembered something else from you? What if they remembered that you were the one that when they had a hard time taught them to pray? You were the one that when their parents went through that thing showed them how to trust Jesus with their life. You were the one that introduced them to Jesus for the first time. That's a legacy. I want to be remembered as a fun person, but I really want to be remembered as the one who was there to guide them to Jesus, who gave his lunch, gave Jesus to them. That's you. That can be you. Stop telling yourself you can't. You can. So, you have a lunch. Give it to Jesus. And then go give it to others. We're going to end with prayer. Because some of you, you're like, I'm not doing that. And I want to do that. Well, let's pray. Let's believe. Maybe you need to give your life to Jesus for real. Maybe you have someone on your heart as I was talking, and you're like, man, I want to make that kind of a difference on her. I want to make that kind of difference on him. Why don't you pray for him? Pray for you that you'll start to step up and do it. If you have any need that you want prayer for, in just a moment, there'll be people at the back of the room to pray for you. We believe it makes a difference. So go and let someone pray with you. Father, I just ask that you would draw every person that needs something from you tonight. I pray that we would live for you and not ourselves, and that we would leave a legacy. In Jesus' name.